Maristan is a nonprofit organization dedicated to reviving the Islamic legacy of research and education through culturally and spiritually congruent mental health care, psychoeducation, and professional training. We integrate faith, psychology, and evidence-based care to address the unique needs of Muslim communities. Since 2021, Maristan has provided over 3,800 therapy sessions, reached thousands through psychoeducation, and trained nearly 600 Muslim community leaders in suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. Through our partnership with Stanford's Muslim Mental Health and Islamic Psychology Lab, we are pioneering faith-centered mental health training, equipping imams and community leaders with the knowledge and tools to support those in crisis. Your support sustains these vital programs, expands our services, and allows us to reach more Muslims with the information and care they need. Give today at maristan.org.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today on this very important topic. I am Rima Abu Ghazala, the Executive Director of Maristan, and today we will be talking about the guilt, grief, and holding on. It's a healing circle for Iran. While it's important to remember the disparities that all Muslims are going through everywhere in the world, things are rapidly evolving in Iran and the surrounding region, leaving us on edge. Today, we have a ceasefire, but many of us know that at any moment, things can get intense again, and maybe even very soon. It leaves us with all kinds of feelings that we don't know how to process, with feelings we don't know how to channel or even manage. We cannot imagine what people are going through back in Iran, back home for some of us, and it's adding more to the stress and burden on us, especially because we're far away from loved ones and from friends and families. So not to take away from what our brothers and sisters are feeling in Iran and going through, or any kind of an area of war and conflict, but we have questions of how do we handle the fear of the unknown, the anxiety from feeling helpless, and the guilt of being a bystander. Maristan's Healing Circle today is to create a safe space and for those who are affected by the events, or just to show support, or just want to show support for our brothers and sisters. I want to talk a little bit about Maristan. So Maristan is a nonprofit based in California that provides culturally and religiously congruent mental health and psychoeducation services. Our clinical education and research-based initiatives are inspired by the historical function of traditional Maristan Healing Center. Our goal is to revive the Islamic traditional function of Maristans with research and education stemming from the work of our very close partner, the Stanford Muslim Mental Health and Islamic Psychology Lab, to inform holistic healing for our clients and provide mental health care for all. Maristan usually holds these healing circles. They're ad hoc and usually held to address the crisis that the Muslim community is facing anywhere in the world. And as mentioned, for today's healing circle, we'll be talking about the current situation in Iran and what's happening with Iranians affected by the events. Our panelists today are Dr. Mojtaba Azadi and Dr. Zainab Hosseini. We will be talking about the historical context of Iran and U.S.-Iran relations, followed by its effects on our mental health and well-being. We will follow this with we'll follow the talk with a Q&A and a poll opening the chance for everyone to participate. Remember, this is a safe space and your voice is heard. We ask you to stay here with us today with the intention of reflecting, learning, and leaving feeling better, inshallah. Our first speaker is Dr. Mojtaba Azadi, is a faculty member in the School of Engineering at San Francisco University. He is from Iran and a community advocate. He has strong commitment to education and community service. Dr. Mojtaba spent 15 years supporting various organizations in Canada and the US, serving Iranian orphans and underprivileged children. I'll be handing it over to you, Dr. Mojtaba.
Thank you so much for inviting me and for the introduction. It is very nice to feel that we are being heard and being seen. So I really appreciate Maristan and also all of your colleagues in that organization. I have to say that I'm here as a non-expert. The expert here is Dr. Hosseini, and she will be the main speaker. I'm here to provide some background since I have lived in Iran for a long time. And I have been in touch with Iran, and I'm familiar with what the sanctions have done to Iranians. I'm here just to provide some backgrounds for our non-Iranian friends on this webinar today. So please, the next slide. So this is a very quick background. As I mentioned, it is very general. Iran, or as known as Persia, as the Iran, the Persia is the name is known in the Western Hemisphere more for the ancient Iran. Similar to other countries around that area, it has a rich history, and currently it has a 92 million population. So when we are talking about Iran, 92 million people we are talking about. And the area is quite vast. It's 3 times than France, 3 times than California. And it's almost as the same size of the Alaska that we have here in the US. The religions are 98% Muslims, and remainings are Christians, Zoroastrians, and Baha'i, and Jews, and other as well. We have about 9,000 Jews still living in Iran. And they have been here. They are actually Iranian Jews. They are Iranian, and they have lived in Iran for more than 2,700 years. There are many ethnicities in Iran, including Persians, Azeris, Kurds, Lurs, Gilag, Mazanis, Arabs, and Baluch, and Turkmens, and so on. We have a very diverse ethnicity in Iran as well. So next slide, please. So here is a very short summary of the relationship of Iran and the US. Before 1940, the relationship was extremely friendly, and we remember, schools, hospitals, or technical cooperation between the two countries. And but after the World War II, things changed after the decline of the British Empire and initiation of a new empire. We had the CIA coup in Iran that ousted a democratically elected prime minister of Iran. And the Shah of Iran, the son of the Shah of Iran, was installed again by British and the US. And that was a really big deal, which still affects our current events here in Iran, and also in the Middle East. We had the Islamic Revolution in 1971, and right after that, we had the US Embassy hostage crisis that lasted for a long time, more than 400 days. And that's also another big event that has affected negatively on the minds of the people who are living in the US. And after that, we had the Iran-Iraq war. Almost everyone supported Iraq in that, Saddam Hussein in that war that killed 300,000 Iranian and had almost the same casualties in Iraq. And so Iraq attacked Iran. So it was really big deal and affected Iranians as well. So that was also supported by many countries, including the US. The US Navy downed an Iranian air flight, passenger flight, right before the 4th of July, 1988. And all of these things are actually contributing to these tensions and the trauma that Iranians have. Still, Iranian, like US people, as we do here as immigrants, we love the people in the US, but the policies between these two countries is what we criticizing. So there were sanctions that started with the embassy hostage crisis and just increased. The nuclear deal in 2015 eased some of those sanctions, and the people in Iran and in the US, they were very hopeful for a very bright future. But 2018, the US withdrew unilaterally, and things became worse. And with the assassination of an Iranian general that contributed more to the tensions. And recently we had resuming the nuclear talk, and all of a sudden in the middle of the talk, Iran was attacked. Nuclear sites was attacked by US, and still we are in a kind of a ceasefire, and we hope that we will have a peace in the region. So next slide, please. Throughout this time, so similar to what our brothers and sisters in Palestine are going through, or all Arab countries, Muslim countries, and even the countries in the South America that they are touted as an adversary to the U.S. One of the policies of the Hollywood and also the foreign policies that we have, we first dehumanize that population. This happened in Cuba, Venezuela, in Muslim countries, in Palestine for sure. You can see that in the almost past 2 years, what's happened, and we have people being killed in the rate of 100 people per day, and it seems that no one does anything effective. So the same story is extended to Iranian, and the same Orientalist perspective is being used to dehumanize us, and really showing the country as very exotic with carpets, very nice statues and saffrons and deserts, but very backward, uncivilized, and very static in contrast to very westernized, rationalized, progressive countries. Hollywood movies, which I invite you to probably even review. I wasn't able to see that 300, the whole thing. The Argo I watched, and Without My Daughter, which is, I invite you to, it's hard to watch, but it really shows how the people dehumanize others and they open the doors to misunderstanding and war. So Western media does their job as well as usual to dehumanize us, labeling Iran as, the axis of evil, and everything else, like the sanctions and travel bans followed after this dehumanization. We can just keep talking about these things, but I just keep it short. So let's go to the next slide. So here is a background on the sanctions. The first sanction was imposed in 1980 after the hostage crisis. $12 billion was freezed, and it was a negotiation afterward. But currently, we have the most crippling sanction in the history of the mankind on Iranian and the Iranian government, as well as the normal Iranian. We have about 900 sanctions on entities and people from the US, 762 from the European, and another big thing, which is like a financial sanction, it's a FATF, which cuts Iranian from the global financial system. I can provide more examples from our experiences for our sisters and brothers who are not Iranian. The Iranian are pretty familiar with this. So next slide, please. Just to provide some background and make sense of what I just mentioned. So this is some sanctions for Iranian inside the Iran. And we are talking about 92 million people. And definitely it is harming the regular people as well. So we can say that this is definitely is harming the government of Iran. But at the same time, when the government and the country is being isolated from, and it's being cut off everything, the humanitarian crisis, which I have noticed in the philanthropic works that I do, is really starts, and medicine shortage, economic hardship, and inflation is the other things. And difficulties in the basic necessities also is something that we always see in the education and so on. So this is for the people inside Iran, and I can provide more examples for the people, the Iranian diaspora. So next slide, please. So if I provide examples for Iranians outside the Iran that lives outside, especially in the US, we are talking about 1.2 million Iranians which are living in the United States, and we have about 12,000 students on the student visa in 2023 and 2024, which is actually half of what we had before, because they stopped issuing visa. So before the travel ban, even before the travel ban in 2018 initiated in the first Trump era, there were lots of hardship as well. And some students were denied visa, and or it was a very long process. After a couple of years, they wouldn't hear back yet, so they had to go somewhere else. And Iranian students are issued single entry visa as well, so it's a really huge deal. So if you imagine that a PhD student who comes here spends here for 4 years to complete the PhD, he cannot go back. I had friends who lost parents, who were not able to attend, weddings, and it's a huge source of psychological events for them. And so they are really trapped until they either leave the country or they get green card, which will add a couple of more years to that 4 years. So, and after the travel ban, things are actually the travel ban that we had. So recently, we do not even have a visa issued for the students. So many people got admitted to the universities. They're not able to come. And it's a very uncertain situation for the students here. And this is actually the population that they are really feeling the psychological effects the most. So next slide. And this is my last slide. So the recent event that happened in the past couple of weeks, which Iran was attacked for 12 days and 900 Iranians were killed, many injured. That's actually extremely a traumatic event for all of us abroad and inside Iran. And we definitely see similarities between what our brothers and sisters in Palestine are going through. The same way of dehumanization, the same way of reporting the news and so on. And as just sharing one experience myself, there's no emotional support for us Iranian here. And what Maristan is doing actually is I appreciate that, and it is very unique, because I haven't seen any email from my colleagues from the university admins. One of my colleagues actually is in Iran, and their friends in the college, they knew that he's in Iran to visit his parents, but he said that I didn't get a single email from my faculty saying that's how he's doing over there during the time that the Iran was being bombed. Okay, so that's my slide. I'll be happy to engage in the question and answers after Dr. Hosseini's talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mojtaba, for this information and giving us context and letting us know how this is not new and there are various angles to consider. If anybody has any questions for Dr. Mojtaba, we will open up Q&A at the end, inshallah. So we will move on now to Dr. Zainab Hosseini. Again, she will be talking more on the mental health aspect and help us process some of these emotions that we're experiencing. Dr. Zainab Hosseini is a postdoc at Stanford University. She is a licensed mental health clinician. Her research focuses on building culturally relevant trauma-informed mental health programs for youth impacted by conflicts, forced displacement, and emergencies. She was also a member of the Stanford Muslim Mental Health and Islamic Psychology Lab, our close partner, and most of the sources of our content, actually. She collaborates with many community partners across multiple refugee contexts in Iran, Greece, Lebanon, and Mexico. So I'll hand it over to you, Dr. Zainab.
Thank you so much for that. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I hope that inshallah everybody is having a pleasant afternoon or evening if you are at a different time zone. And I have to echo what Dr. Azadi mentioned in terms of the level of appreciation that we have for just having this space and being able to come together and process a little bit together some of the very traumatic experiences that a lot of us have experienced in the past couple of weeks. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So for the remainder of the Healing Circle, I'm going to be dividing our conversation into two sections. So for the first section, I will go through a short period where we're going to be doing psychoeducation. So what we'll do here is I would like to go over discussing some of the psychological consequences that the recent events have had, and we'll discuss what those consequences have been, not only for the people who were directly impacted in Iran. We'll also go over thinking about what the consequences were for people who were outside of Iran, who had people who they love inside of Iran, as well as the general Muslim Ummah or anyone who really cares about their brothers and sisters in Iran. After talking a little bit about the consequences, then we'll talk about the concept of holding on and what it looks like to be steadfast, strong, and heal in the face of some of these challenges. And after we're done with this first section and really going through some psychoeducation, then we'll practice some healing. We'll go through some healing exercises together to try to practice coping with the current events, and inshallah, be able to cope with it well, and also support each other in being able to do so. So let's move to the next slide. So before I start talking about what the psychological consequences of exposure to something like what happened in Iran can look like, first we have to ground our conversation in what basic psychological needs every single human being has. And if we think a little bit, if we start from the basic psychological needs that we have, then we can really start to organize how what has happened impacted the different groups of people who were in some shape or form impacted by the events. There are three general categories of psychological needs that we can think of. This, I'm grossly simplifying lots of literature so that we can root our conversation in these needs. Of course, there can be a lot more. They can be a lot more complex. The first area of need that we have as human beings in order to be able to function well and just stay well is a basic need for order, stability, and structure. We need to feel that our surroundings, where we live, our environment, and our psychological worlds, so how we experience the world, is orderly. It's something we can predict. It's something that has structure around us. We have routines, and that gives us a sense of security. It makes us feel that we know what to expect and how things are going to pan out. We also have a basic psychological need for being able to assert ourselves, be productive, and have an impact and control in our environment. If something happens, if we have a goal, we have a basic need to feel that we are able to move towards that goal and accomplish that goal. And finally, as humans, we are deeply, deeply intertwined and have very deep desire and needs for building connections and being connected with other people. When these three general areas are fulfilled, we tend to stay well. An affront to any of these three areas, and in circumstances like what happened in Iran recently, when all of these three areas are impacted, psychological functioning can diminish very rapidly, and it can have very serious consequences for people. So let's move to the next slide. In the next slide, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be organizing how the constructs that you see on the screen relate to the people who first were inside of Iran and who were impacted directly. Then I'm going to talk about how it has impacted folks who are outside but have people who they care about on the inside. And then the general Ummah and anyone who cares about the current situation. Let's move to the next slide. So the 6 important psychological phenomena that can start to explain, at least start to capture, certainly not thoroughly capture, but start to capture why experiences like the attacks on Iran can have such deep consequences on people's psychological functioning. It's helpful to think about these 6 constructs. The first is that when events like the ones that happen, the element of shock, so the fact that it is something that happens all of a sudden, it has a sudden onset, over a few minutes, people's worlds can change, can have generally speaking, it can have a very strong effect on a person's psychological functioning. So for folks who are inside of Iran, this element of shock was rather strong because it was something that happened that over, like, within a matter of seconds or minutes, it created a dramatic shift in their world and the worlds that they were navigating. Another thing that occurred as a result of these attacks was that the routines, the structures that people had in their lives were disrupted in this shocking and dramatic way, and people experienced displacement. So as Dr. Azadi mentioned, for the folks who may not be aware of what these 12 days were like for folks in Iran, many people were forced to leave their homes and seek shelter elsewhere in different cities. Some of the cities that they would go to would be unsafe again, and they would be forced to move again. Many folks, when they came back to their homes were destroyed. So the experience of displacement and not having stability of a place to live and experiencing disruption to your regular routines can have serious psychological effects. Another factor that was important for folks who were in Iran and impacted by these events is the unpredictability that comes when your world is shattered. So when your world is disrupted, when the order that you know exists in your world is disrupted, the brain starts to believe that the world is an unpredictable place. It's a place where you cannot know whether tomorrow you're going to be safe. It's a world where you cannot plan for what you are going to be doing tomorrow. And some of the conversations that we've been having about the ceasefire being temporary is exactly what is contributing to that unpredictability going on. Unpredictability is one of the perhaps the most toxic experiences for the brain. So brains like to have predictable patterns. They operate based off of patterns and experiences that happen consecutively so that they can accustomate to what they know what they expect when it's not possible to know what to expect. And when it's not possible to create a plan, it can be incredibly dysregulating. Grief is another factor that has impacted many people who are inside of Iran. So the experience of loss of first, potentially family members, people who you may know, your loved ones, or just other citizens who you may be your neighbors. So the experience of loss can bring a loss of another person can bring about grief. In addition to the loss of other human beings, the loss of infrastructures. So the loss of things like a functioning airport that you may be able to use, or streets that are destroyed, or running water that may be impacted. There is a sense, in addition to the physical, just life challenges that poses, the loss of infrastructures is something that we have to make sure to pay attention to when we're talking about how grief impacts people who are directly impacted by these experiences. Guilt is another experience that can impact folks who may feel that they are not able to do something about improving the circumstances that their country is going through. However, the reason that you notice this color being different is that the experience of guilt tends to be something that at this stage is stronger for people who are outside of Iran, which I will speak about in just a second. And lastly, the experience of powerlessness. So feeling like you not having the self-efficacy or the agency to feel that you want to be able to do something to make your life more predictable, make your life more structured, make your life more orderly. And there being systemic issues that prevents you from doing that can certainly contribute to the psychological toll that you experience. Let's move to the next slide. So now I'm going to be speaking about what some of these psychological elements, how some of these psychological elements have impacted the people who are outside of Iran, but have strong connections with the inside, whether they have loved ones, family members, whether they ethnically identify as Iranian. And the colors that you see here are meant to represent the degree of the intensity that people experience some of these psychological elements. So the experience of shock, again, for the folks who were outside of the country and have loved ones inside, the shock was also rather impactful, perhaps not as much as folks who were inside of Iran, but still the over a few seconds, your world changing is relatable and has impacted the psychological well-being of folks. Disruption to the disruption that has led to displacement here is not relevant because we have not been displaced as a result of these experiences. However, the unpredictability and grief, so unpredictability about not knowing how, when we talked about it in the context of the people inside of Iran, it's about what life is going to be like for you. For folks outside, it could be the unpredictability of not knowing what life is going to be like for your loved ones. And especially if you have close connections with the people who are inside. So whether they are parents, children, or other people who you deeply care about, the experience of not knowing what the lives and the well-being of the people who you love is going to look like can be rather intense when you cannot predict whether they are going to be okay the next day or not, or whether they are going to be whether they're going to have access to the things that they need access to, etc. Grief is also an element here that relates very strongly with people who are outside of Iran as well. And this grief intersects closely with the guilt that we experience. So grief here, again, like I mentioned, could be in relation to losing family members or loved ones who are directly impacted. The grief that I discussed about the loss of infrastructures is also very relevant here. So the loss of just the experience of knowing that infrastructures that hold things together, that bring about order, are lost is an experience that we usually forget about. So we usually forget about how, especially as people who are outside of Iran, we tend to forget about how knowing that folks on the inside are going through some of these challenges and knowing that some of these injustices are happening to them brings about a sense of loss for us, because it's a loss of the safety that they experience. And it is a very normative experience to feel that you are mourning or you are grieving the loss of the stability and the safety that the people who you love and the places that you loved were where they once experienced are now not experiencing anymore and have lost. Guilt, I think, here is probably one of the strongest emotions and experiences that people have in relation to the events, especially when you have loved ones and people who you care about who are on the inside. The inability to be able to be present for them, to be next to them, to hold space for them, to experience the adversities and injustices that they're experiencing with them in and of itself can bring about guilt. And guilt is a very complex experience. So on the one hand, it's very human to know that it is better that you are safe and that you may not be bombed. At the same time, that intersects with having loved ones who you 100% want to be next to, and you 100% want to share any adversity that they're going through. So for those of us who have loved ones inside of Iran, the thought of them going through experiences that are difficult alone contributes to a deep level of guilt for us, and it has this reverse effect where we actually do want to be in a place where our life may be endangered as well, but then we are next to the people who we do love. Having those complex emotions requires a lot of cognitive functioning that can contribute to a lot of fatigue. So guilt, one of the things that it actually does is, because it's a very complex intersectional, sometimes emotion that has like different elements that are at odds, it contributes to a lot of fatigue and a lot of psychological toll that sometimes goes unnoticed. Sometimes we don't know that that's what's happening to us. And that matches well with powerlessness. So the inability to be able to do something about the current circumstances. And I think what I want to point out here as I talk about powerlessness is how pervasive this feeling has become in the past, especially pertinent and especially relevant in the past few years in the context of what has been going on in the larger Muslim world, and especially particularly in Palestine and in Gaza. And now as Dr. Azadi was saying, now it's starting to permeate in other places, like what has the attacks on Iran. Let's move to the next slide, please. So lastly, I again pay attention to the color coded here is just describing the intensity of the experiences that folks may have. So I want to recognize that it's not only people who have family members or loved ones inside of Iran, but the larger Muslim Ummah or any human being who really just cares about their brothers and sisters in humanity may be impacted by the current circumstances. So the element of shock can be relevant here. The element of unpredictability, so still not knowing whether not knowing whether injustice is going to continue or not being able to predict whether the world can move towards a more just place can still be unsettling, even if you are not directly impacted by the current events in Iran. So if you find that you may not have direct family members in Iran, you may not even be Iranian or have any family members in general, but you're just a person who is a human being who cares. Perhaps one of the reasons that one of the psychological tolls that you are experiencing is just the unpredictability of not knowing whether an unjust force is going to continue, what else they may do, how else they may wreak havoc in the world, how else they may invoke injustices on other people can have a psychological toll, and then contribute to grief. So grieving for the people who, grieving for, generally speaking, people who just as a human being you care about can have a psychological toll, especially in a day and age where we immediately have access to people's challenges as they go through them through media. And guilt and powerlessness, I think, are, like I was saying, in the past few years have become pervasive in just how we feel as a Muslim Ummah around what may be happening in different parts of the Muslim world. And in this context, in the context of Iran, if you are a person who, like I was saying, is not directly impacted or does not have direct family members, it is a phenomena where you may be impacted as your psychology and your mental health may be impacted as a function of the guilt and powerlessness you feel in relation to the larger injustices that are happening in this context against Iran. Let's move to the next slide, please. So we've talked a lot about the psychological toll that the attacks on Iran have had on different groups of people. Now we need to take a pause. So we need to pivot for a second here. And while we hold space for understanding, labeling, and verbalizing and organizing how the injustices that have been happening are impacting our psychological well-being, it is incredibly important to balance the conversation that we have had so far with an understanding and a knowledge and trust in the belief system that we hold as Muslims, in our Islamic roots, and in the power of Allah. So the term holding on I use here, which I have actually borrowed from people who are in Iran and who, as in my conversations with people in Iran who have directly been impacted by the current circumstances, this is actually a term that I am borrowing from them, as they were describing how their current circumstances and how their psychological functioning is. And what I keep on hearing is that we are holding on. We're not going to let go. This is in order to care for our mental health, in order to care for our psychological well-being, holding on is what is allowing us to stay well and to be able to stay strong. And I want to bring your attention to the ayah in the Quran that speaks where Allah in the Quran specifically instructs us to hold on to His rope and to not be distanced from each other and instead come close together. I mean, I'm obviously paraphrasing the ayahs of the Quran. But the gist of the ayah being that what is Allah instructing us to do is to hold on to His rope and is to hold on to the trust that we have in Him and to come close to each other and to be united with each other, to not let go of His rope and of each other. So what I want to emphasize here when we want to think about when we want to start at least thinking about what healing may look like is, before moving on to the exercises in this healing circle, is to first encourage you to reflect on in your own time, and take a quiet moment, maybe after this healing circle, maybe on a drive that you have, or right after you make salah. So at a moment when you have a moment to pause in your daily routine, I want you to think about two things. The first part, so think about the left side or the graphic that you are looking at. The first thought that I want to encourage you to reflect on for yourself is that despite a lot of the challenges, a lot of the systemic injustices that we have talked about, a lot of the bullies that exist in the world today, we as Muslims have an unequivocal, unyielding belief in the fact that we have a God. There's Allah created this universe, who is omnipotent, so He is all powerful. Anything is possible within His will, and He is in control. And the second thought being that He is all-knowing. So there is no single event that happens in this world that is just randomly getting lost in the universe. Every single thing that is happening in the larger structure of His creation has a place. Every injustice that has happened, every reaction that we have had, every injustice that has happened to us, or every reaction that we have had to the injustice, all of it is getting factored in. It is not in vain. And it is being noted in the larger universe that Allah has created, not just in this world, but in the hereafter as well. So now that we ground ourselves in this first thought, like, what does it mean to have a God who is omnipotent, to have a God who to believe in a God who is all powerful, has all powerful above every single creation in this world, and is all-knowing above every single creation in this world. When we ground ourselves in that thought, it tends to encourage us as Muslims to be people who are resourceful. So we tend to be people who, in the face of adversities, in the face of challenges, in the face of the most limited amount of resources, we find ways to be resourceful. And I think a great example of that is how the people of Iran have found ways of reacting and responding to the sanctions that they have been forced upon them by some of the bullies that exist. We tend to be people who are wise and creative, so we find different ways of tapping into the wisdom that Islam imparts on us to be able to solve our problems. We're cohesive. We believe in this concept of wahda and being together and being close together and having each other's backs. And this transcends ethnic boundaries. So it's not just about Iranians having Iranians' backs, but the belief in Allah and in Islam encourages us to be cohesive among each other as Muslims and with our other brothers and sisters, but particularly within the Muslim world, to have each other's backs. So support each other, find ways of supporting each other. Those of you who are on this call who are not Iranians but showed up anyways, are people who are living examples of that cohesion existing. And those of you who attend some of the other support systems for other groups, you're a living example of this wahda or togetherness that we have in Islam. And the last thing that this imparts on us in a God who is all powerful, all knowing, and all just, is that we tend to be people who are strong-willed. We're stubborn in a good way. So we tend to be people who don't bow down in the face of injustices. We don't just let go. We don't just let other bullies tell us what to do. And when a lot of the adversities and injustices that we have been talking about on this call have happened to us, we find ways to resist. We find ways to not give in. We find ways to keep doing what is the right thing to do, and stay strong in the face of some of these challenges and not bow down. And these are important attributes that we tend to have. Our legacy as Muslims give us. It's a part of our identity. It's a part of our DNA. And these give us tools to be able to navigate some of the challenges that we have been talking about pose us. Let's move to the next slide. So here we're going to now pivot and transition into doing some activities with each other. What I would like to ground us in is this idea of collective healing. So rather than me discussing, giving you strategies for how to cope with the current events, which I'm sure every single one of you is wise and has found different coping tools for the current circumstances, I'd like for us to practice hearing from each other's experiences and grounding ourselves in some of the thoughts and the wisdom that we hold in our brains by sharing that with each other and using that as a way of getting closer with each other and moving towards healing. So if you could please go to this website, or you can either scan this QR code or go to this website. You will see a page that has where we can interact with each other. And I will be sharing my screen so that as we go through some of the questions that I'm going to be asking you, we can read about and just learn about each other's responses and reflect on them together. Some of these responses I will synthesize myself, and some of these I will share with you so that you can see what the responses look like. So if you can please, I'll just give you about a minute so that you can just get on the website, get yourself connected, and then we will start with the first question.
I also dropped the link in the chat. Hope you can see it in case you can't access the QR code.
Thank you. Okay, so I will wait just one more minute for folks to please join. So scan the QR code or go on the link and answer the first question that is on there. So the first thing that we want to know is just to start to get a pulse check for who is on this call, who is here. So I'm going to just take a second to just take like maybe 30 more seconds to for all of you to answer the first question. So I'm going to share my screen now to show you what the responses have been for the first question. Can you see my screen? Rima, can you confirm if you can see my screen?
I can see your screen, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So assuming that all of the responses have come in, one of the things that we can see is that a third of you are actually folks like what I was just describing. You're folks who don't even necessarily have family members in Iran. You're here because you care about the state of the Muslim world. A little over 60% have immediate family members or close friends who were impacted by what's going on. All right, so I'm going to now move on to the next question. So just keep looking at your screens. The question is going to change in just a second. So very quickly, I want to just also get a sense for how old everybody is. So if you could please just answer the question in terms of your age range. All right. So this is just for everybody to see who's here, like just so that you get a sense for who else is on this call in terms of age range and level of being impacted by the circumstances in Iran. So now moving on to our first question. The first thing that I want to ask is, so keep looking at your phone. The first thing that I want to ask is for you to choose the top 3 constructs that affected you when you heard about the attack on Iran or the aftermath.
So Dr. Zainab, it is not letting you choose 3.
Oh, interesting. Thank you for letting me know. Let me fix that. All right. Now you should be able to choose 3. Okay. So it seems like it is the poll is full because there's so many responses coming in. So we'll just go with what we have here. And it looks like the two most I don't want to say popular, but the 2 most common reactions that folks on this call experienced were the sense of unpredictability, so really not knowing what the future will hold, and then the powerlessness that we talked about. So now I'm going to change the question. This time, I'd like to hear from you about whether we missed anything. So is there any other thing that you experienced, any other experience that you had in relation to these circumstances that we haven't talked about yet. So look at your screen now and answer this question. All right, so let's go through some of your responses together. I will share my screen so that you can see what some of you have shared. So the responses are just going to keep on coming through, but the two of the, there were three psychological experiences that we didn't talk a whole lot in so far. So one of that has to do with rage and anger. So the frustration, rage, and anger that comes from being exposed to injustices is something that a lot of us have been experiencing in relation to the attacks on Iran, but also in the past few years. And that is connected with the powerlessness, with the unpredictability of not knowing whether this, like the unjust powers in the world are going to continue wreaking havoc in the world. Another one of the something else that I'm reading in these responses is a sense of betrayal. So being in a place where you are contributing to the betterment of society in some way, but then that society not having your back when something that you care about happens, and instead actually contributing to that thing getting worse. Another thing that I am seeing is a lack of motivation. So one of the things that happens as a result of the shock, as a result of the unpredictability, as a result of the not being able to plan for your future and not knowing what the future is going to hold, is the lack of motivation and some of the depressive symptoms that may come with this lack of hope. And I think that is something that we definitely want to hold space for here. And remember how the slide where we talked about holding on to the rope of Allah. I think one of the most understandable common reactions that people that we have in relation to big injustices that happen, where things are not fully in our control and things don't feel like there's anything that we can do about it to just like press a stop button. One of the really very most common understandable reactions that we have is not feeling motivated to do anything, because we tend to feel small in relation to the big thing that happens. And that's really, really where that slide where we talk about ayahs of the Quran where Allah instructs us to hold on to his rope become our saving grace. Because those of us who feel the experience of feeling demotivated, you're right. It is very demotivating. It is very understandable and very, like, it's a very reasonable thing to experience. And it would even be reasonable to say that you just lose motivation to do anything, except if you believe in a God who has told you, who has very specifically told you, trust, hold on to the rope of Allah, where you have a God who you know is all powerful. That's the only way under circumstances like this, where you have a bully who seems really big, to be able to cope with the situation. Stay strong and keep doing what you're doing, because you know that however big the bully is, your God is bigger. Your God is more powerful. And in fact, God is the God of also those bullies. So they are also getting their none of this is in vain, and they will be there will be justice towards them as well. And one thing I want to recognize here is that I want to just validate and emphasize that if we did not have a belief in Allah and the way that He has created this universe, it would be impossible to cope with the current circumstances and the level of injustices that happen in the world. That's why it's incredibly important for us to hold on to this rope of Allah, because that is the only way that we can manage to cope with the current circumstances, find ways to stay strong and keep doing whatever way that we are continuing to serve Him, so long as our practices are serving Him. And I think that also connects with one of the other things that folks have written, and that has to do with starting to wonder whether we are standing in the right side of the world, and what does that mean for who we are in the country where we live in. And I think the thing that I want to encourage those of you who have written that is to it's really a matter of thinking about holding on to the rope of Allah and reflecting on, in those moments of silence that you have with yourself, and what it is that God has ordained for you to do in a circumstance like this while you're holding on to His rope. So thinking about it from His in the perspective of serving Him, and what your responsibility is in this current circumstance. All right, let's move on to the next question. So please look at your phones or your screens. This one is going to be supposedly going to create a word cloud for us. So I will share with you the word cloud. So think about the very first emotional reaction that you had, the first thing that happened in your heart or inside of you when you learned about the attacks, and write that. All right, so as the responses are coming in, I'm just going to very briefly share with you the word cloud that has been populated so far, so that we can go to our next question. It really looks like, I think the sadness that fell in our hearts is something that was shared among a lot of us.
We don't see, was it a word cloud that was supposed to come up?
Yes, are you not seeing it?
We're seeing an application, yeah.
Okay, hold on a second. Let's see. Let's try this again. Do you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, so now that I have shared this word cloud with you, let's move on to the next question. Please look at your phones. Or sorry, I keep on saying your phones. I don't know if you're on your phone, your screens. Okay, so now I'd like for you to think a little bit about the person who, this question is mostly geared towards folks who have loved ones in Iran, although it can also be answered by those who don't. So think about the person who you care about the most in Iran, or the people, but I encourage you to think about one person, make it personal. And what if you could be next to them right now, sitting next to them, what would you want to tell them? What do you want to actually verbalize to them, and write it out here? If you don't have a loved one in Iran, you can think about a person in Iran, somebody who was impacted by these circumstances, and what you would like to tell them. And for this, I think we'll take just a few more minutes than the regular time, so that you have enough time to think about it. So I have shared with you some of the responses that came in. I hope you had a moment to read through them and read a little bit about what those of us who are on this call would want, the people who we love and care about, or the people who we just generally care about as our brothers and sisters, what we would want for them to know. Some of the themes that I'm noticing here is really wanting to be close to them. I imagine those are from folks who have their loved ones, just wanting to be in proximity to them, missing them. So sometimes when we have a desire to be close to the people who we love, it creates a deeper sense of longing for them and wanting to be in their presence, and just really wishing to be able to be next to them. Sometimes we underestimate the power of some of the simple experiences that we don't get to have in life. So sometimes it may be just an experience as simple as sitting next to a loved one, being present with a loved one, just having like quality time with a loved one that could include literally doing nothing. But what I want to emphasize is that it's okay to just at this moment want to be in proximity of the people who you love, who may not be safe, who may be hurt, who may have had really scary experiences in the past few weeks. And just wanting to be close to them right now is a thing. And the next question is going to try to get at that. So please look at your screens. And answer this question. And if you are not, if you don't have a loved one in Iran, again, just think about your brothers and sisters in Iran and how you would want to respond to them. So in the interest of time, I'm going to synthesize some of the things that are shared so that we can move on to our last question, our last reflection question. And then I also want to encourage you to, I think after this, we're moving on to the Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to write them in as well. Some of the things that you have shared is to sign petitions. So sign petitions that are against war. In your interactions with them. So this is all that I'm sharing is wisdom that you have shared, which I think is actually rather valuable. So talking to them in ways that show them that we care, and communicating that we did things that we could to try to end the injustices that were being brought upon them. When we talk to folks who are under these difficult circumstances, sharing memories, sharing good vibes, positive stories, finding ways of laughing. I'm adding that part. They did not put laughing. Focus on being successful in sectors that'll eventually aid them from the efforts that we can put, inshallah. Writing them, asking about their needs, asking if there are ways that we can support them. So these are examples of things that we can do. And lastly, let's move on to the last question that asks you to imagine your children in the future. So it may be that you have kids now. Imagine those kids are older, or if you don't have kids, imagine your kids in the future. And this question really asks about, so imagine your kids ask you about this time. They ask you about June 2025. They want to know what happened. What did you do? How did you respond to these circumstances? So what I would like for you to write is how you want to be remembered, as what kind of person who did what kind of thing in response to what happened in June of 2025 to Iran. how would you like to be remembered by your own children? If it's something that you still have not done, but you would like to do so that you can be remembered in that way, you can still write it, even if it's something you haven't done, but want to be remembered by and want to be able to do. So let's take just a couple of minutes to write that down, and then we're going to transition into the Q&A, inshallah.
I just wanted to note that we have 5 minutes until the Q&A.
So I'll go ahead and share my screen so that we can see some of what some of the responses that people have shared, and then we can transition to the Q&A. Okay. So I think one of the things that a lot of us want to be known for is our ability to be able to speak out against what's going on, our ability to be able to support the people who are impacted. And I think one question that I know that has come up in some of your responses, both in terms of how you want to be remembered, as well as some of the challenges and questions that we're asking ourselves that impact how we're feeling, is how the contributions that we are currently making as people who live in this country is making the contributions that it's making to wars and to the injustices that may happen to other people. And that's something to think about. I'm not here to give an answer in terms of how to think through and resolve some of those feelings that we may have about contributing to what's going on. One question that I want to pose to you, however, and that I want to encourage you to think about so that you can try to come up with an answer, is how you would like your future generations, your own children, to remember you as a person who did what when they were faced with the challenge of being in a place where they were having these questions like their tax dollars contributing to other people being harmed. So think about the future. Think about, imagine you may not either no longer be here, or it is the future and your children are asking you these questions, and how you would like to be remembered, to try to help you orient how you can manage these questions. So that concludes our discussion of the healing component of my presentation. And so I think, inshallah, now we'll transition into just in case anybody has any questions that they would like to share. And so I'll allow Rima to share those questions with us.
Thank you, Dr. Zainab. Thank you for this presentation and the engagement. I think it was very interesting seeing some of the responses. And also, I think it was really important to also understand that we're not alone. We share a lot of the experiences, questions that you had in terms of how did we feel when we first heard about this. And, we see that we have, we're all in this together, and that other people were feeling the same things we're feeling. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A box. In the meantime, I just wanted to remind everybody that Maristan is a 501c3 nonprofit organization and zakat eligible. Our zakat donations goes to treatment for outpatient therapy sessions in our clinic. Our clinic is at the Muslim Community Center in East Bay. However, we do also provide virtual therapy sessions. So whoever is in California, and if you're in need, please check out our clinic. It's on our main website. We have here the phone number as well, and you can always email the clinic at clinic@maristan.org for any questions. I also wanted to point out that we also have a program with Stanford University through the Stanford Muslim Mental Health Initiative. It is through the Markaz that you have there. We do therapy sessions for college students on campus. So please check it out if you need it. And we listed a few other resources as well. We do these learning circles often. We try to do them every month, so please stay tuned. And for anything that you would like to, if you have any questions about anything, please sign up for our newsletter. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us on outreach@maristan.org. So I encourage everybody to sign up for our newsletter, to stay tuned. I believe we have another learning circle scheduled sometime soon, inshallah. It's still in the works, so we're planning it soon. So please stay updated on our Instagram, and then on if you sign up, you'll receive our newsletter. The last thing, until we get more questions, is that this session, inshallah, will be uploaded. So it's recorded, right? So it will be uploaded on a YouTube video, and you can access it through our Maristan channel or on our actual website. So if you've missed any parts of it, or if anybody else that wants to, look over it again, it's going to be there, inshallah. Again, our newsletter, if you sign up for our newsletter, you will get a notification on when it will be uploaded. So I am going to check out the questions. So we have one. Well, we don't have any questions. We just have a comment that the interactive part was very thought-provoking. Jazakallah khair for giving us a chance to express ourselves collectively and individually. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is a healing circle, and we wanted this to be more of a space, like we mentioned, for you to come and not just, it's not a lecture, come in and leave. So we were so grateful for Dr. Zainab to provide that segment. I don't see any questions come in. Again, dropping questions here, or you can always email us later. If you have any questions for Dr. Mojtaba or Dr. Zainab, we can always connect you with them as well. I don't think there are any questions coming in. So I don't know if there are last things that you want to say, Dr. Zainab or Dr. Mojtaba, before we conclude this.
So I think I have already shared a whole lot. I'm going to ask Dr. Azadi if he has any final concluding thoughts that he would like to share. But thank you, everyone who stuck around, and also everyone who is still holding on and moving forward.
Yeah, I also want just to thank you and Sister Rima and the rest of your colleagues for organizing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So Dr. Zainab, we do have one question that came in just now. How to seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
So I think I need a little bit more and I'm not sure exactly what they're referring to. So I'm going to just answer generally speaking, but if there is like a more specific question, I'm happy to for you to share my information with them so that they can connect with me there. I think in the first step is our belief in our steadfast belief in Allah as all powerful, as all knowing, as all just, in and of itself is a part of our help seeking, is a part of not only our help seeking, but our using the help that Allah has provided for us. So the universe and the structure of the universe and our ability to have intimate connections and conversations with Allah is an incredibly important tool that we have as Muslims that often is not present in many other ways and worldviews about the world. This truth that we hold on to, it really empowers us to be able to be resourceful, to be able to be strong. So one is just the belief. The fact that you believe in this in and of itself is already a part of the help seeking. Another part of it is, I would say, through reflections. So like I said, in moments of silence, in moments of taking moments of pause, whether it corresponds with salah or is added to your daily routines, to reflect on the creation of Allah, the way that Allah has given us the tools that He has given in building those connections. And then the last step, I would say, is actually seeking help and verbalizing our help and making dua to Allah to make the give consequences to those who are inflicting the injustices, and empowering us to be able to do what is right in response to these injustices.
Thank you, Dr. Zainab. There was a question regarding whether there are healing circles happening inside of or outside of Iran. I believe Dr. Mojtaba would like to answer this question.
Sure, yeah. So last week, actually, on the Stanford campus, there was an event by the Quran community that they hold bi-weekly sessions. So they had invited a psychologist, Dr. Shamlu, from the community. She came and talked about, some aspects of the mental health as well. And they are going to have with Brother Fatahian, Hamid Fatahian, who had some sessions in Maristan before. So together they are planning for a bigger couple of sessions events for people inside Iran or outside Iran who can attend online sessions. This is what I know. I have noticed on the Instagram that the people are actually posting about the mental health. I was hoping that we will see something for our students on campuses from the admins. We didn't get anything, but I can see that the community itself is trying to provide some sort of support.
All right, thank you. Okay, so again, if you have any questions that come up later, you can always reach us and email us at outreach@maristan.org. I just wanted to thank everybody again for their time. Jazakallah alf khair. اللهم يا من علمت آدم الأسماء كلها علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم اجعل هذا المجلس مجلس خير وبركة واجعله مغفرة علينا. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. سبحان الله سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Thank you all. جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم.